work together as a society, so there's a bigger scope. There's very much a theme of accountability, ethical behavior, and the cause of law and effect within the Justice card. Welcome to the Justice Tarot card lesson. In this lesson, we'll be reviewing the meaning of the Justice Tarot card, where we'll go over the general meaning of this card, and we'll also be doing a tarot analysis, where we'll be using 3 key factors on how to interpret any tarot card without memorizing the meanings, and ultimately empower your intuition. We are all intuitive, so think about intuition like a muscle. The more you use your intuition, the stronger it gets. This video is part of the 22-day tarot challenge, where each day of the challenge we will go over a major arcana tarot card, otherwise known as the Fool's Journey. Sign up at tarotchallenge.mysticmondays.com to get the worksheets to participate in these lessons and join our private community for this free 22-day tarot challenge. But before we get started, let me introduce myself. I'm Grace, and I'm the creator of Mystic Mondays, the artist, author, and founder behind all of the Mystic Mondays decks, the Mystic Mondays app, and all of the Mystic Mondays courses. Over the years, I've had the pleasure of teaching tarot workshops and reading tarot for hundreds of people, having collaborated with brands like Chanel, Macy's, Shopify, Urban Outfitters, and so many more, even reading tarot in the metaverse. But that's enough about me. Let's get back to this tarot lesson. Let's begin this tarot lesson with the general meaning of the Justice Tarot card. The keywords for this card are law, objective, and fair. In astrology, justice is associated with Libra, a zodiac sign of diplomacy, harmony, and balance. Libra is represented by the scales and value justice, partnerships, and elevating communities. They often see beauty in their surroundings and look for win-win situations. In numerology, justice is associated with the number 11, which is one of the numerology master numbers and can guide you towards a path of mastering skills of empathy, creativity, and deep intuition. Numerology 11 breaks down into number 2 and carries the same energetics of balance, partnership, and duality. Knowing the correspondences of the Justice card can give us a greater understanding of the card's meaning, as well as the overall energy of this card. If you want to access the tarot card meanings on the go, we also have the Mystic Mondays app for you to access the tarot library, and you can also draw all of the Mystic Mondays cards for the day to give you daily guidance and to be a part of your daily rituals. Justice is a card of balancing the scales and keeping a level playing field. With the Justice card, it's important to remain as objective and impartial as possible, and to keep your emotions in check. Honesty is the best policy on your search for truth, with fairness leading the charge. The Justice card is about enforcing rules, and that actions do have consequences. On a personal level, this card can be about taking responsibility and accountability for everything that you do, even if situations seem out of your control. Do your due diligence. Before getting involved in situations, make sure that you are aware of the rules and regulations so that you stay within the law. Facts are your source of evidence, not hearsay. You are but a small part of the system, but that doesn't matter. You will still be able to make a big impact. Justice signifies dealing with legal matters of any kind. Keep cool, stay level-headed, and let justice prevail. That's it for the general meaning of the Justice Tarot card. Let's move into the next chapter of this lesson, the Tarot Analysis. For this portion of the lesson, we are going to look at 3 different cards from 3 different decks. The Rider Waite deck, the Mystic Mondays Tarot, which is the deck that I created as both the author and artist, and our guest deck, the Stardust Wanderer Tarot. Quick shout out to my podcast, The Graced Podcast, where I interview other deck creators, artists, authors, and other spiritual wellness experts. For the Justice podcast episode, I actually interviewed the deck creator behind the Stardust Wanderer Tarot, Jen Sankey, and we talked about themes of the Justice card as well as this self-published deck, which features a main character, Mina. So if you are interested in space pirates, definitely check this episode out. Okay, so let's get into the tarot analysis, where we'll be looking at 3 key factors to help us interpret these cards: color, symbolism, and personal experience. We've got color swatches here besides each card, and I'm a huge color nerd. Typically, when I first see things and interact with things, I feel like the very first thing I notice is color, and I feel like color is a really great way to intuitively understand something without necessarily knowing what the symbolism is. So we've got the color swatches here to help us decipher what the card is trying to communicate through energy and also through its messages. I think it really shows off the personality of that deck also and what colors were chosen for that deck. So for the Rider Waite, we have a more toned down palette, probably colors that were popular during that time, created in 1909, but depicts a lot of medieval imagery, and tarot itself was created either in the 1440s or 1450s. The history is kind of an unknown, but we do know that tarot was created in Italy initially in those years. But anyway, with the Rider Waite, we have some pretty toned down colors. We have different elements here, but we have this green cloak, red robes. We have this maroon kind of banner in the background. We have yellow to indicate certain elements like the handle of the sword, the crown, also the scales that this figure who is representing Justice is holding. We also have a lot of gray in this card, which I feel like there's a stoic nature that Justice has. I also feel like gray as a color represents neutrality. I think red can indicate there's like authority. Green typically I associate with abundance, but also can be associated with growth. And I think in this card, it more so indicates cause and effect. And I think here, because I believe in some decks it's different, that I think purple or this maroon color can indicate like wisdom, spiritual knowledge, and things of that nature. So color-wise, in the Mystic Mondays Tarot, there is no person present. So there's a lot of blue in the background. I suppose this would be the person, the hand here, who is also blue with a tinge of pink for the gradients that I tend to use in the Mystic Mondays Tarot. But for the most part, I feel like the law of the universe is not necessarily governed by a person. It's kind of governed by the universe. And I think that's what this vastness of the blue can represent. And when I think of justice, I think of imagery like the Statue of Liberty, maintaining our freedoms within our human rights. And so that's where the inspiration came from for using these type of green jewel tone type of colors. And then we have accents of yellow here within this more stylized scale that I illustrated. And then in the Stardust Wanderer Tarot, we have a character named Themis. This deck is very character based. As mentioned, there's a space pirate that we follow throughout all the cards, who is a female space pirate. And Themis is the goddess of justice in Greek mythology. So this is that interpretation of Themis here, holding the scales. I feel like in this card, we're seeing a lot more earthy colors. So we have this brown here, we have the yellow here, and then we have purple in the sky, which I think can also harken back to this purple banner in the Justice card, indicating some sort of like spiritual wisdom. I guess it can look like a banner too, but it has stars on it, and I think that can point to like a more galactic wisdom, which, I think is really present in this deck. But similar to the figure in the Justice Rider Waite card, she's also holding scales and a sword, and also wearing aspects, like she's wearing this like Venus symbol. She also has her own crown, which also looks like a hairpiece. And she looks wise. She has white hair, so it could indicate that she's like more mature or older so it has more wisdom. And I think like in terms of white, like wearing the color white can also indicate like purity and not necessarily being tainted or viewed at as an authority figure. So let's get into symbolism. As a central character, we do have Justice here for both the Rider Waite Tarot and for the Stardust Wanderer Tarot. In the Rider Waite, I believe this figure is depicted as a man, and in the Stardust Wanderer Tarot as a woman. And in my deck, I chose not to display a person per se, but just a hand, so that no matter what gender or race you are, you can identify with this card. Because we all, to some extent, deal with justice and the laws of society, the laws of karma, the laws of the universe. So I feel like there's a human element at play here, but it definitely can depend on your situation and what you're going through. But we all have to adhere to some rules to function in modern society. Scales here are represented in the Justice card as a major symbol, and that is present with both of these decks in the Rider Waite and the Stardust Wanderer Tarot. In the Stardust Wanderer Tarot, there's a star at the very top of the scale. But scales tend to represent balance, fairness, and the weighing of actions and consequences. So we typically can think of the outcome of what our actions have led up to this point. Obviously, there's a huge scale in the middle of the Mystic Mondays Tarot because that is a huge symbol of the Justice card, which is also associated with the sign Libra, which is also associated with that symbol of the scales. Weighing things fairly, looking at things from a diplomatic point of view, caring about justice on a larger scale besides yourself. How are you impacting others? How are your actions creating a ripple effect as you move about in the world? And are you thinking about that? Are you thinking about how your actions are potentially impacting other people? And of course, the scales often portray balance, because if one, let's say, action or situation is heavier than the other, then the scales balance each other out by going up or down. And then when they're weighed the same, then they're on the same playing field, or the scales are balanced in that way. We see a sword here in the Rider Waite and also in the Stardust Wanderer Tarot. The sword is typically shown upright to indicate clarity, cutting through illusion, and delivering fair judgment. It could also represent people who are in power or who have the power to uphold the law. So it could be like law enforcement officials, like the police, government officials, people who are practicing law, who know the rules and have studied law, are then put into these positions of power. I'm going to turn this layer off so that you can see, because sometimes the Justice card has a blindfold on the figures, but in both of these renditions, there is no blindfold. But here you can see these little light rays coming out of Themis's eyes. And I feel like that has to do with being able to see the truth clearly. And if you can see this guy's facial expression, he looks very serious. I think in all of the cards, we do see a symmetry. There's a certain balance in the card as well, that both sides, right and left, have similar objects. And I think that really reflects back to this duality that is present in the Justice card. There's kind of like good and bad, the weighing of what is considered to be good and bad. These pillars here in the Rider Waite also remind me of the pillars in the High Priestess card, and that sense of duality, and also protecting the ideals of the law, upholding the standards, so to speak. I think in the Stardust Wanderer Tarot, this is like the helm of a ship, because this deck is all about space pirates. So instead of having the pillars, we have the two, I believe they're called ship masts, and she's like in the middle of these ship masts. But overall, there's a sense of justice, there's a sense of fairness that is being upheld within the Justice card. And I think also we typically look for in society like people upholding the law, because if there were no rules, would anybody follow them? Obviously, we have laws in place so that they are followed, not just for us individually, but also on a larger scale for all of us to operate in a way where we can be mindful of one another and work together as a society. So there's a bigger scope to look at and a bigger way of looking at things. There's very much a theme of accountability, ethical behavior, and the cause of law and effect within the Justice card. Justice is associated with the number 11, which is present here in all of the cards. 11 in numerology relates to the number 2, so it has a lot of correlation to the number 2 tarot card, which is the High Priestess. So a lot of the similarities that we see in the Rider Waite with these pillars and with the, I think, symmetry in all of the cards can really speak to what we correlate with the number 2: balance, duality, contrast, black and white, good and bad. Those kind of themes kind of fall into the number 2. And when I say good and bad, I'm just using that as an example of duality, contrast that exists within these themes. All right, so we're going to get into personal experience. And I was wondering to myself if I should even tell this story, but there are several things where when I look back on building Mystic Mondays, kind of just shocked me at what people were trying to claim or whatever it is. So one thing that I can look back on is when I was just first starting, when Mystic Mondays Tarot was still in the Kickstarter phase, someone had messaged me and told me to change my tagline because they had trademarked or copyrighted a very similar saying, but it was like a very popular saying, like everyday magic or something like that. And to put the words in lowercase instead of uppercase, because that's how they were using it. And they threatened to sue me. And I was like, you can't sue me over that. Like, everybody uses like that saying. You can't, it was crazy. So that's one story that comes to mind. And then when she threatened to sue me, I was like, then sue me then. And she never did. So there you go. Another thing that I feel like is kind of crazy is I actually got served a subpoena. Someone had tried to accuse me that I was copying their work, but not copying their style or anything like that, just copying the style of box that I was using, which I honestly didn't even have that much of a say in because the publisher chose the box. I was one of the targets, but it was in the larger scheme to sue somebody else who was overseeing several other tarot creators. And it was really unfortunate that person tried to go after us because that person is a well-known person in the tarot space. So it was honestly a bit disappointing. And that box, that type of box, is used by many, 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 many people, not just tarot people. So kind of wild to go after someone for something like that. But anyway, I got served a subpoena, and months later, the judge ruled in the other person's favor. I'm not going to mention too many details because I think some of it's just personal and not really my story to tell. My part of it was basically getting subpoenaed and also being asked to reveal very personal things like how much I got paid from these contracts, etc., that person had, no right to have access to. So anyway, I'm mentioning this because it's all under the Justice card, and I feel like justice prevailed because the judge threw out that case. And now that person has no claim to any of the things that they were claiming about being copied or ever bringing this case back into court ever again. Because clearly it was a case just to get out of her existing contracts. And she was just trying to create a case for her to do that she was wronged so she could then get out of these contracts that she signed and etc., etc. But I think in a lot of cases, these tend to balance out where you may not be sure what the outcome will be, but I kind of feel like the law system, of course, I'm bringing up very specific examples of the law, like the legal system that we're all under. But I think we can look at justice in a lot of different ways, like the political system and how that aligns with our beliefs. And also, if we're operating in a certain way, Like, meaning if we're doing the things the right way, meaning we're not like hurting anybody or doing anything illegal, then oftentimes I feel like these issues that come up, if someone decides to go after you for whatever reason, it should go away because you didn't do anything wrong, you know? And I just find it surprising that these things have happened to me in some form or another, because I'm just doing my thing, making my art, writing, you know, creating, and then it just draws in attention, whether it's positive or negative. And I suppose it's a good thing to be noticed, but in some cases, it can also be annoying because you're definitely not trying to attract that type of attention, especially when you're just trying to do like your life's work, right? So anyway, I'd love to hear about you. How do you connect with the Justice card? Have you had any dealings with the law that you can think of that have impacted you in a certain way, or maybe made you look at the legal system in a different way? How do you feel about authorities in power, or who have the power to enforce rules like the police? Do you know anyone in law enforcement? How do you feel about the laws of the universe? Definitely use the worksheets in our 22-day free tarot challenge to help you with these prompts. All right, that is it for the Justice Tarot card lesson. If you liked this episode, remember to like, subscribe, and comment so that more tarot lovers and learners can join us on the Fool's Journey. If you want to dive deeper with this card, you can listen to the Justice Meditation, which is available on our YouTube channel, The Mystic Mondays YouTube, with full extended meditations inside our Coven membership portal. And just so you know, each tarot card also has its own collection where you can shop your favorite tarot cards on the Mystic Mondays site. So if you are feeling super connected to the card, we do have Justice merch on the Mystic Mondays website for you to shop right now, like the shirt that I am wearing. And if you use code JUSTICE, you can get 10% off any item in the Justice collection. Thanks for being here. Sending you so much magic today and every day. See you in the next lesson.